Hey, welcome to the Inner Circle podcast, where growth minded leaders come together to build better businesses and better lives. I'm your host, Hector Alvarado. Here, we don't do theory, we share real lessons, real systems, and real strategies you can use right away. This is a community for people committed to growth, impact, and supporting each other on the journey. You're in the right room, my friends. Let's get started. So, welcome everybody. We decided to pivot a little bit this week. We are going to go deeper into the four workplace cultures. And I know some of you that were at our live event are aware of what those are because we've shown you, we gave you, some material to go back to your workplaces with and actually start to, become accustomed to it and be very intentional about the workplace cultures. But this four-part series will break it down further. We're going to go deeper into each of the four workplace cultures to give you the right tools to go and action them, to go to work, to really gain momentum, and to ultimately build the right culture for your team. So, those of you that were present, this might be a refresher. Those of you that are new, great, you'll hear it, again, and we look forward to for you getting some value. So, welcome again to the Inner Circle call. Let's think about the best team that you've ever been part of. Take a moment and think about that. Not the most structured one, but the one that with the best processes or the fanciest tools. Like none of that. Like just think about the one where people actually wanted to show up every single day and where conversations were real, where it didn't feel like work. Can you take a minute to think about that? Like if you had had an opportunity to work in an environment like that, imagine it, picture yourself in it, and take that feeling of how excited you were while you were there. Because most of the time, when people describe that team, they're describing a happy accident, right? So if you think about it, we're actually going to jump into the very first one. And today, we're going to show you why that is. Why that same culture, the one that felt so good, is also one of the most dangerous places for your business to stay at. Not because it's bad. I want to make sure I'm clear about this. It's not that it's bad, because it just doesn't scale well. And that is what makes this eventually the big problem that it'll become, as it will crack and it will break. And that's the pain point that a lot of companies, a lot of small to medium sized businesses need to truly understand. So here's what we're going to cover today. We're going to go into exactly naming what the happy accident is, what this culture is, and how it forms. We're going to walk away from this knowing 6 warning signs that tell you if you're living in that one right now. And we're going to talk about what it actually is costing you. Because you guys know me by now, and we're always talking about ROI and how it connects back to profitability. And we're going to know what happens when this scales. Okay. So we're going to look at real case study of what happens when the founder steps away. Some of you are going through this right now, and the culture cannot survive without them. Then we're going to give you the 3 specific moves that you can make this week to start building something intentional. All right, so ready? So let's get into it, okay? Now, I'm not talking about something that is magical. What we're going to talk about today is very real, and all of you can start to work on this. In fact, you should be working on this right after we hang up the call. So, do you first understand that every business has a culture? Now, I know some of you are driving, right? But just show, maybe nod your head, right? You understand that. Like, you understand that your business has a culture. And again, when I talk about culture, I'm not talking about ping pong tables. I'm not talking about like pizza parties and casual Fridays or any of that stuff. I'm talking about how people behave when no one's watching. I'm talking about how decisions get made, how conflict gets handled, and what gets rewarded, but most importantly, what gets ignored. Okay? Because it's in what you ignore that you become that becomes uh, the tolerated habits that genuinely become your culture. Okay, so here's an uncomfortable truth: your culture exists today, whether you designed it or not. If you did not build it on purpose, something filled that space. And that generally is personalities. And those personalities come with habits. Habits that you may not have helped create either, right? That could be a previous employer, it could be a previous team, that could be upbringing. It's definitely different habits. And so what happens is the loudest person in the room genuinely starts to create those habits and those culture points if you have not worked at establishing the right culture for your business and for your leaders. So let's get into how this actually forms naturally. Okay. All of you started a business and it was small at one point. In the early days of that business, you started it through and you brought in some people that were close to you and that you knew. So, through relationships, history, and shared experience, you naturally built this happy accident culture. And nobody sat down and designed it, it just happened. It was organic. Some of you, and I've heard this from other organizations, that'll say like, hey, I love our company barbecues that we do on Thursdays or weekends or Wednesdays or whatever. Yeah, they're great while you're small, but they don't align as you scale, because the behaviors that may be exhibited in some of those barbecues may not be healthy for everybody. So it's understanding the output in these type of activities that again brings it back to what is the behaviors and the actions that you want to see. So here's the one thing that I want to make sure that is clear: the happy accidental culture, it doesn't feel bad. So today, if you're living in it, you may actually be thinking that it feels good. People feel like family. There's real energy and there's real authenticity in it, right? You, as the boss, you know everybody's name. You know their wives' names, you know the kids, you know a lot of the people there. But you have built it together from nothing, which is why it feels good. And there's a bond that is truly genuine in this culture. Now, what happens is that there's three conditions that create it. The very first one is a small team where everyone knows everyone. Everyone there knows each other. You're connected. It's informal communication that occurs, and that works perfectly fine. Okay, the second condition is the shared origin, where people are from, where they were there from the beginning and bonds were formed organically. And the third is a strong founder personality, and the founder's values leak into the team, and that is what creates some of the culture. Unfortunately, though, this is not documented. It is just forced through time spent together. So those are the three conditions. And as a result, it all feels super authentic, warm, and real, because it genuinely is. There's nothing to say that it's wrong. Well, the problem is that it was formed by fluke. It just happened organically and not with intention. So what happens next is what I want to talk about. So I want to walk you through 6 warnings. And as I name them each, I want you to think honestly whether you have seen these in your company today, and maybe even in the last 30, 60, 90 days. Okay. So here's the first warning sign that you're in this today: inconsistent behavior across people. So one manager lets things slide and another holds the line. Same team, different standards. And nobody can explain why. Because I'll tell you, it was never written down. So that's your warning sign number one. So ask your leaders, right? Monitor their behaviors. Because if they're inconsistent, one holds the line and one doesn't, that tells you you have a culture breakdown. That's your first warning. Your second warning is that standards depend on relationships. The person who's been there since the beginning gets treated differently than the person who just joined 18 months ago. And everybody, folks, knows it. Just that nobody says it out loud. Okay. I've worked with some teams where the tenured people get away with some stuff and it irks the new people. It really does bug them, and that isn't healthy. So if you have that, there's your signal warning number two. Okay. Signal warning number three is your new hires feel like outsiders. Not because people are unkind or rude to them, but because the culture is stored in memory and not in systems. So you had to be there from the beginning to be able to connect. You cannot teach what was never written down to them. So they had struggled to connect with their people that you have in the team today. Warning sign number four, okay? The culture dilutes as you add people. You've heard the phrase in more than one business, I'm sure, and like I've heard it many more times than I can count. It is just not the same as it used to be. Who's heard that before? Right? Nod your head if you've heard that. It's just not the same as it used to be, right? Now, that's not nostalgia. We're not talking about the 80s and 90s. We're talking that when that is heard in a business, that is happy accident hitting its ceiling. That's telling you loud and clear that you have a happy accident culture. Okay. Now, warning sign number five, values are described but not defined. So, what does that mean, Hector? Well, the leaders can feel the culture, they can feel it, but they can't write it down. They cannot teach it, and they cannot hold someone accountable to it because it was never truly articulated, right? They don't understand. They just know this is how we do it. So what you hear is this is how we've always done it. That should be setting off alarms. If you hear those things, that means that you have an happy accident culture still pretty much alive in your group. They're resistant to change because they like the comfort of the way it felt and the way that we've always done things. So that tells you right there that you have something to work on. And the sixth and final warning is that growth creates inconsistency, not strength. And it should be the opposite. Your second location that you're opening up, the next department, the new offering, right? That remote team, none of it feels the same because the culture was never designed to transfer. It is bubbled up, protected like a shield inside that first building, that first sort of culture hub. And that is a big warning. As soon as you expand, if you aren't intentional about that, you will break your culture 1000%. So those are your six warning signs. So if you raised your hand or nodded your head in any of those, you may be living in that accident culture right now. And that's not judgment. That's not what I'm here to do. It's just a starting point. It's just letting you know that that's what you have today. And here's the honest cost of what this will cost you if you don't become intentional about fixing it. Okay. And I want you to sit with this for a moment because what works with 5 people, what works with 10 people will 100% break at 25. It will break at 50 because informal communication worked when everyone was in the same room. Now, information falls through the cracks and nobody's sure of what is to be decided because now it expands through multiple channels. And when before leadership modeled the values personally because they were there in the room, there was a handful of people, it was easy for them to model it because the leadership was always present. But now that the leader can't be in every room, can't be in every city, can't be in every branch, then the behavior becomes inconsistent. And the relationships that drove accountability when nobody knew each other, now the person without the history feels like they have no accountability at all because they're not tied to anything historical. So here's the one truth that hurts the most as you're thinking about all this. When the founder is the culture, the founder becomes the bottleneck. And I say that honestly. The business cannot run without them today, then that folks, that is not a culture. That is dependency. So if you're proud of the fact that the business can't run without you, you're putting yourself and your business in a pretty crappy situation. And the people around you are not going to get the best value out of the teams because they're stuck there like everybody else. They're bottleneck. So in order to truly understand the cost of what this is doing to you and to your business, I want to talk about a calculation, and this is for yourself, okay? So, how many new hires in the last 12 months required 6 or more months of in quote unquote get it? Right? How long did it take for a new employee to get it? When you say get it, that means that they understood the vision, they understood the culture inside your team, they understood their their deliverables, they understood what they were accountable for. Right? Think about that. How long did it take? And how many people have left because the culture felt unclear or unfair? Even if they could not even name exactly why. Right? Now, the last piece on this is how much of your time goes into managing inconsistency that a documented standard would fix. Because every hour you spend managing inconsistency is an hour that you did not spend building. And that is the tax of an unintentional culture. That's the tax of what you're paying if you continue to live in this particular culture. So let me give you a real world example of what this looks like. And I'm sure that a lot of you have gone through it, but I just want to give you one that might hit close to home. It's a residential service company, it's a trades business, and they grew from 4 techs to 22 in little over 32 months. Okay. Classic happy accident culture. They built entirely on the owner's relationships, his reputation, and his presence. That's how they built, that's how they scaled. The culture was strong, the turnover was low initially, and customers were loyal because they were loyal to the founder. So he had no reason to think that anything was wrong. In fact, he thought things were pretty great. So he decided it was time to finally take his vacation after a few years of not going away. And within 5 days, these three things started to happen. 2 techs had a conflict that nobody could resolve without the owner. Think about how that portrays back to you and your business. How many problems or conflict resolution do you need to be involved in because your team can't do it on their own? Okay? A manager made a hiring decision that violated unspoken cultural norms, and everybody felt it. That means that they made a people decision without truly understanding the implications of it. Okay? Because nobody had ever written it down. So this person just went on gut feel when they were to hire somebody. But that person that they hired, not a core value alignment, didn't go through the right processes and the right channels. They just hired them because they felt like they needed a body and this was the body to bring in. And then a long term client called to complain. And the technician who handled the job wasn't the same one that they were used to. So gave the wrong information, didn't take care of the customer the right way, and all of a sudden that client who was tenured felt frustrated because they weren't dealing with the person that they were generally dealing with. Right. And, I can relate this back to Willy's trucking where, clients just like to deal with Willy because Willy would always be the one that would help them. And when Willy wasn't around to speak to them initially, then it became a question mark of like, hey, where's Willy? How come Willy's not available? How come this person's not available? Everything channeled through one person. And I've seen many companies where that continues to be the case. So what happens is this owner came back from this vacation and realized just the broken atmosphere that was there. So the moment he stepped away, right, he saw how it shattered. And so the lesson in this is that a culture that cannot survive without the founder is not a culture. It is a personality, and it is a happy accident. And so, the happy accident itself is not really the problem, but the problem was that the mistaking the accident as an asset. So let me say that again, okay? The culture itself is not the problem. The problem is when founders believe that that is an asset. I hear it all the time. How many of you have heard it? We're like a family. Have you heard that before in the business place? We are like a family. We do this like a family. We're close knit like a family. Yeah, that's cool when you're 10 people strong. What happens when you become 100? Right? So never turning it into a system is what's wrong. And that's the problem. You can still feel like family. You can still feel the cohesiveness and the closeness to the core value alignment. That shifts how it produces. That shifts the outcomes because now the standard is set to a set of rules and expectations that people get hired to and that they get disciplined on, and how the bar is set versus how just the founder set them. And now we all just follow the founder. And as the founder says, this is what we do, right? And so, or this is how we've always done it. And so it sets a very different outcome of results. So to make it clear today, that changes, right? And I'm not going to ask you to rebuild your entire culture in a week because that would never happen. That would be failure in its own. But this is not about that in this session. But what I am going to give you is three specific moves, three simple moves you can make starting this week and why each one of these matters, okay? And if you do this, it will start to shape up your culture quite easily. So let's start with move number one. First one, as I've said just a few minutes ago, is understand your values. So name them. And I'm not talking about your aspirations. Don't confuse values with aspirations. Okay? And do not write the values that you wish you had. Write the ones that you're actually living and that you're present today in behaviors. Okay, not in your head as like, what you like them to be. What is actually meaningful today? And ask yourself, what does someone have to believe, or what they have to thrive to thrive in this team? What do they have to actually believe in order for them to thrive here? Right? So what do they need to show you? What do they need to be able to believe in their gut in order to be successful? Then write that down. For the first time, documentation is critical, and it is now that you start to become intentional. So write down these values for your company. Second move is identify the unwritten rules in your business. Every happy accident culture runs on them. You just may not know them. So let me make sure that you understand them. They feel obvious to insiders and invisible to newcomers. So go to your longest tenured team member next week and ask, what would I have to tell the new hire that they would never find in a document? Ask them to describe it, right? What would a new hire need to know right now if they were to step into the building that they would not find documented anywhere, but it was important for their success? And write those things down because you'll hear it from your tenured people, right? And that is your culture surfacing, what those answers are. And you might hear somebody say, we take pride in this, or we do that. We always meet up after work, at this bar or whatever for food. Okay, that's a culture thing. Somebody new and it doesn't know that, they're not going to click with that person. Or they might say, hey, yeah, we always handle our customer resolutions within 48 hours. All right, that's a standard. That's an expectation that if it's not documented, somebody new may not catch on to that and then they're going to fail. So ask your tenured employees. They'll gladly tell you because in case you may not know it, they have it. It's just in their heads. Okay. And then move number three, pick one behavior to standardize this week. not five, just one. Choose something that is currently inconsistent. How feedback is given, as an example, how meetings start, how urgency is communicated, and then go set the bar on that one thing. So let me give you an example. Customer complaint. Customer complaints today because XYZ reason. What's the timeline or the expected timeline that the customer receives resolution? Is it 24 hours? Is it 48 hours? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks? What is it? What's inconsistent in that right now? And then go set that standard, go reset it because now you can start to fix it, but it starts with you. So you model it first and then hold that standard for 30 days. And that is the beginning of intentional culture when you start to work towards it on purpose because culture does not wait for you to design it. Again, it doesn't. If you do not build it intentionally, something else will fill its space. And the culture that you build is a choice. So make it on purpose because it's going to be built regardless. So that's week one. Four cultures that we're going to target, one target at a time. Now, you know which one you're in now. And by the end of this, you'll have the framework to go work on specific one, the one that is right for your business. So if you're joining us here through this series and part of our inner circle, you'll get a worksheet, and that worksheet has the happy accident self assessment. So complete it. I want you to complete it before next week because I may ask you to bring your score, and I honestly and genuinely will want to know what your score is. So please bring your score next week, okay? Because next week we get into the command and control, and that is the most authority driven culture in any growth business. And you'll learn how to recognize it. What is it doing for your people and to your people, and what it really takes to shift from compliance to ownership. So if you've ever wondered why your best people are leaving, week two might give you the answers that you're looking for. All right. So that wraps up the first culture. And we'll open it up back to the group, but I'll pass it to you, Willie. Maybe you can share some insights on the happy accident culture because I know you've lived it.
Yeah, thanks, Hector. And yeah, I'm actually in Las Vegas here today. I was at a mastermind with about 20 business owners here today, and there was a lot of talk around how do we remove ourselves from the day to day. There was a lot of those questions, and and so I shared with them, and I said, to me, it starts by first building out that vision on paper so you can communicate that to the team, and that will create your culture and the accountability around that. And yeah, that was a big topic today. So I had a good chance of sharing how we did it at Willy's, and how we kind of, or how we got out of that happy accident culture and started building that intentional culture by implementing the core values and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
so yeah, I shared it here today again. I can't express this enough how much I believe in this, because it just changed my life in our business when we got serious about it. And so that's I know some of you are solo entrepreneurs at this point, or yeah, just starting out or a smaller business. But if you're learning this now, you are so far ahead than anybody else as you keep growing your team, and if you can, yeah, have this in the back of your mind, what to focus on as your team grows. I think you're going to be ahead of the game.
Absolutely. And as we talk through this particular culture, I don't want to make it feel like the happy accident is bad because it's not. Like there's a lot of good points in happy accident. The organic family feel is good. Like
Yeah.
there's, and you lived through that, Willie, and like, can you maybe like think back about how did it feel when you had to shift away from that? Like, because most people are scared because they
Yeah.
see that as an asset. So like, what was your experience with that?
Yeah, there was definitely a time where it felt like, um, man, do I want this actually to shift because I wanted that family feel or people not to think or the employees not to think that they're just a number.
Right.
But I would say going through the process in our framework here is where then we implemented that one-on-one sit down with every employee every 90 days. And we would
Mhm.
ask two questions: what's working, what's not working for you? And that helped us still stay and connected to the employee, that they felt like they were not just a number still in the business. I think that was once I saw that working, where we could train our managers to do that, and people felt like they they had input in our business, and so once I saw that, then it wasn't as hard for me to remove myself further.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lot in that to unpack because there's an element of trust. There's an
Yes.
right there's trust that comes in there. There's an element of the right people, developing the right people, and then having the right framework for those people to go and actually have their a quarterly one-on-one conversations, right?
Yeah.
So it
Yeah,
becomes very intentional.
exactly. And the trust piece is so huge. Also, where it comes now down to making sure you got role clarity in in each role, and then making sure the right person is in that role qualified to handle that role. And once that is in place, then to me, that's where I could start trusting the process as well.
Mhm. Now,
Yeah.
if you were to go back in time, right? Like think back, you open up your first branch,
Yeah.
right? And things are good, everything's clicking, and you make your expansion second, third branch. At what point would you suggest to the owners in this room that they start working on their culture intentionally? At what point? Is it once they've
Mm,
already opened up the second branch? Is it
no.
before? When, Willie, would you
Well,
start
that's the thing. I think we talked about a business the other day that is expanding to a second location, and they haven't really built out their framework or their structure, and then it's kind of like you're putting the cart before the horse. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, before expanding to a second location, is this is a must almost.
Yeah. So the moment the idea comes in your head to expand, it's like now you got to start working on the culture first. That's a wrap for today's episode of The Inner Circle. If something in today's conversation resonated, inspired you, or gave you a breakthrough, please share it with someone you care about. The right idea at the right time can change someone's business and their life. So make sure you follow the show, leave a review, and stay connected with us because this community is built on relationships, real support, and real growth together. Remember that clarity means nothing without action. So choose one insight from today, put it into motion this week, and notice the shift. Thank you for being part of this journey, for showing up for your growth, and for being part of the Inner Circle community. See you in the next episode, and let's keep growing together.